Okay, we are now streaming live since we have our full board participating. I would like to say thank you to everyone for being up and ready so early this morning, and a huge thank you to Mr. Lawrence for coordinating this week of professional learning for our district leadership team. We are excited today to have our guests with us to do the annual required training for our LSGT and our charter process. I think it will give us an opportunity to answer some questions and gain clarity on some things that we might have a little confusion about, and just to strengthen our knowledge about our work with charters. And then later on today, we will do some work with our mission and vision as a district, as our goal is to just revise our strategic plan for the next 2 years, and allow the permanent superintendent to come in and make some changes. Sorry, there's an echo to come in and make other changes to our strategic plan. But we recognize that it's very important that we continue to move forward with our work so that we can advance achievement for all students in Clarke County. So thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you, Lawrence, again. And I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce our guest.
All right, thank you, Dr. Thomas. Again, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining so early on a Wednesday. Yeah, 9 o'clock, you all are up and early. Everyone's looking good, so thanks for being here and the bright smiles. Like Dr. Thomas, I'm really excited about today's training, our professional learning together. We have some amazing facilitators joining us with just wealth of knowledge and information that we believe will help to continue to move the needle forward as we do this great work in the Clarke County School District. So I won't berate the topic in the beginning. I do think it's really important, though, as we engage in professional learning, just to have a moment of introductions. I've been trying to figure out how to do that with a Zoom with so many people. We're not going down. You tell people to do a brief introduction and some people go for 10, 15 minutes because all of your resumes are very impressive. So I think what will maybe help is when you first speak throughout the day, just to introduce yourself during that moment. And you can just say, this is who I am, and this is a question I may have. And I think for our facilitators up front, it may be good for them to at least introduce themselves. So I'm going to pass to Russ, if you can kind of lead the introduction of all the facilitators on the call, and then we can transition from there. Also, just a reminder, if you can mute yourselves when not speaking, just in case, you get a phone call or your dog barks in the background. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat. Then Royard and myself, we are here also monitoring that. So we'll also answer questions there. So on to you, Russ.
All right, well, thanks, Lawrence, and thanks for allowing us to be here this morning. It's a pleasure. What I'd like to do is to begin with our presenters and have them each share a little bit about themselves, their background, their knowledge in the area, what they're doing now. We have 3 presenters planned for this morning for the first part of our session. We have a panel of individuals coming in at 11 o'clock. And so, Cherie, why don't we begin with you? Just a quick little background about yourself. I think everybody already knows you, but let's hear from you first. All right, there you go. I see you're unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. I do have the PowerPoint in front of me, Russ, and so I will be able to, just get you to proceed and move the slides forward. I'm Cherie Sherman, and I started in the Clarke County School District in 1976 as a kindergarten teacher. I was one of the second kindergarten classrooms that opened in the district. And I worked in the Clarke County School District for 24 years as a teacher and as a principal of Alps Road Elementary. I worked in your central office as the lone curriculum director. Back in the day, we didn't have a whole army of people. We had one. And I was also your assessment director, and I was your professional development director. They call it staff development. Later, I went to Jefferson City Schools for 7 years and served as the associate superintendent. And in a small district, you learn to do everything because there's only 2 of us. And then I retired. And during that time, I started studying about charter systems. And that's what brings me here to you today. I worked with Barrow County and later many other systems to find out how charter system work could really impact school districts and the work they do with students. I was hired by the State Department of Education, and I continue. I've been working with them for 10 years, helping to support school districts across the state who chose to be charter systems. And I'm the designated person to support Clarke County in anything that you do to work toward being a successful charter system. And currently, I serve as superintendent of Foothills Education Charter High School, and Clarke is one of our fine partners, and we're located over in the H.D. Edwards building. And I work with the State Department, but I also work with the Charter System Foundation in partnership with Lynn and with Emily to deliver governance training across the state.
Thanks, Cherie. Lynn Puckett, share a little bit about you.
Good morning. First of all, I'm delighted to be here. And I started out, well, I live in Rome. So I'm kind of up in the Northwest Georgia corner. I started out in 1975 at Rome City Schools, and I was teaching 7th grade. And my husband and I married, and he had a position that required him to be transferred. So we spent some time in Florida, and I taught at Manatee County High School in Florida, and we were transferred back to the Atlanta area, and I spent some time in Cobb County and Marietta City, and also in Bartow County. And during that time, I served as a teacher. I went into administration and served as a curriculum director, staff development director, very much as what Cherie was saying. And a lot of times I was working as that one-person department. Then I went to the DOE and spent 2 years at the DOE in the early 90s, working in assessment, and learned a lot about the whole assessment piece and research and development, and I really enjoyed that. Then I had a wonderful opportunity to come to Floyd County, which is our home. My husband and I grew up here, and I became the deputy superintendent in Floyd, and then became the superintendent, and I retired in 2012. Floyd is a charter system. We were one of the early charter systems, and we were in the second cohort. And we also have a college and career academy, and we're one of the early college and career academy districts. So I helped to lead those initiatives. And after my retirement, I have worked as a consultant with the Georgia Department of Education, with the Charter System Foundation. I've also done some work with the Technical College System of Georgia. And I did about a 5-month stint as an interim high school principal down in South Georgia a couple of years ago. And that was kind of interesting, but I loved it. And I really enjoy the charter system work. I've worked with a lot of school districts in developing their charter system applications, as well as supporting them in the work they're doing, and helping them renew their contracts, and the same with college and career academies. So I'm just delighted to be here with you today.
Thanks, Lynn. Emily Limbeck, welcome. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Emily. Welcome.
I don't know, Russ. I don't know if she can hear us.
Oh, good morning, Emily. Welcome. All right, we'll come back to Emily. Cherie, could you send her a text and let her know that looks like she can't hear us, or Lynn? And let me move on to Dan Weber, who's the Executive Director of the Foundation, and get a welcome from him. Dan?
Thanks, Russ. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Weber. I'm the Executive Director of the Charter System Foundation. I want to thank Lawrence and Fenwick for putting this together this morning, and Russ for you hosting it and helping put it together. We are a nonprofit. We're governed by a 7-member board of directors.
Lawrence, can you hear me? Okay.
Comprised
hear
of
you.
7 superintendents around the state. We now have 48 charter systems in the state of Georgia. And our goal is to support those charter systems through workshops, training, and advocacy at the state level. I've been in this position for about 6 years now. Previously, I served in the state Senate from 2005 to 2011, when I served also as the education chair. I'm not a presenter today, I'll just be observing. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Russ.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Should I just log out? Yeah, okay.
All right, so Emily's going to log out and come back in. And so while we're doing that, let me just go ahead and review the agenda that we're going to follow this morning. I believe you received a copy in advance, but I'm just going to very quickly walk through that. And perhaps we'll have Emily back in and she can introduce herself, and we'll begin the session. So the first item that we're going to take up this morning is what you'd like to know about charter systems. And we sent out a question for all the participants to respond to, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We thought it would be important to look at the Clarke County charter system story so far. So we, over the last, I guess, 18 months, we put together a document that provides background information there. You should have a copy of that as well. But most importantly, we want to talk about where we are and where we're going. So we'll use that as a background. Then we have a presentation that our 3 presenters will provide, and we've organized a certain way for that, and I'll share that in a moment. We'll take a break around 10:45, and then we'll bring in our panel of charter system leaders, and Lynn will host that. And then we'll end the day with, if we have enough time for some questions. We know we may not get to all questions today, and we'll follow through with the document. There you go. There you see the agenda. So that's our plan. Let me now see if Emily has come back. Is Emily with us?
She's with us, Russ, but I'm not sure she can hear us.
I can hear.
Oh, she can hear us. There you go.
Thank you.
All right, so we good? So Emily, we were introducing everyone. So if you would tell us a little bit about you and your background, and we'll be ready to dive into the first item.
Okay, well, I just want you to know that I was able to hear and speak earlier, so I don't know what happened. But I am the retired superintendent from Marietta City Schools. We became a charter system back in June of 2008, and Marietta was one of Georgia's first 4 charter systems. I now do consulting with the Charter System Foundation because it was the one thing I truly felt very passionate about as a superintendent and as an educator. So I look forward to working with everyone today.
Thanks, Emily. And just a quick little note about me, teacher, principal, district office person, superintendent. I've been working with the Clarke County District off and on since about the mid-90s when I was with the Georgia Department of Education, later with Northeast Georgia RESA as the executive director. So many miles working with Clarke, and always enjoy that opportunity. And so this morning when I was asked to moderate this, I just jumped at the chance to support you all and to work with you again. And, you know, I'm reminded of that insurance slogan when I hear of all the things that our presenters have done in their experience, that we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. And so this morning, we're going to be sharing that and working through the agenda. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, we had asked that our participants respond to what would you like to know about charter systems. We had 23 questions, and I think that maybe somewhere we have that, not that we need to see it on the screen right now, but those are the questions. And what we did is we organized those questions by presenter. And we asked that the presenters address these as they move through their presentations. They may not call the question out and then answer it, but they're certainly going to refer to the things there. And so we had that organized into 4 categories: charter system requirements, flexibility, innovation, and then there were some in-house questions that dealt with kind of operational things, et cetera. And so, you know, I think we're going to be following up with this with another document, Lawrence and Fenwick. So, but those were questions, and we're going to address those as we work through the presentation. You also have, as the second item on the agenda, the timeline document. You know, it's important to know the planning, the implementation, and the training events that have occurred since this journey began in June of 2014. And this is really an ongoing document. So if there's some items that need to be added, please let us know. But we tried to capture the events that have occurred along the way. But I think most importantly, you know, capturing the history, of course, but most importantly, you know, we want to turn to the present and where we're going from here. And so I asked Lawrence and Fenwick to take a look at that and to share some information about where we are and where we think we're going. And there you see the document that was compiled. And it's pretty lengthy, so you know, I'm not going to take our time today to go through each item, but this is certainly will be available to everyone after the meeting, and I really invite you to take a look and see all the things that have gone on to get us to where we are today. So Lawrence or Fenwick, can you talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going, and also reference that to our College and Career Academy, because that's very much a part of the charter system work.
Yeah, I'm happy, Russ, I'm happy to speak to where we are, and in many ways where we are is reconnecting to where we've been as a charter system. Those of us who were involved from the very beginning of our application to become a charter system know that we made some pretty firm commitments at the outset to embracing charter flexibility as a way for us to more intentionally involve our community in the planning and the operation of our district. Lawrence and myself having recently been added to the team whose direct responsibility is to oversee our charter system contract and its implementation. We're committed to returning to that original mandate and are actively involved in the work of accomplishing exactly that. A couple of the things that we've got on our docket right now and sort of where we're headed in order to achieve that. Some of you, most of you, I guess, are aware of the fact that, I mean, the title of our office is Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships. We see those two as sort of symbiotic and connected, and the work that we're doing in each of those two areas really reinforces the work that's being done in the other area. As far as the community engagement side of our office is concerned, we're actively working on integrating internally this notion of community engagement, really sort of emphasizing the importance of it in all of our operations, not really thinking of community engagement as the work of one department or office necessarily, but really as a lens through which we can view the work that we do as a district, recognizing the importance of community input in order to have the buy-in and confidence of our community. And so we're working internally. We've got some work that we're doing with our cabinet members in support of a planned LSGT university that we'll be hosting. One of the objectives of that university really is for us to operationalize the LSGT input, really figuring out specifically what it means for our LSGT members to exercise the authority that they all have and that sort of decision-making input that they're able to offer, figuring out what that looks like inside of each of our departments as those departments currently exist. Also in support of the work of community engagement, we've been in direct communication and work with our family engagement coordinator, our Title I coordinator, I should say, Hope McGuire. The professional learning for our family engagement specialists will be shifting over to our office. We'll be providing direct support for those family engagement specialists, recognizing them as really like a crucial linchpin between the work of community engagement, family engagement, and the charter system, that these family engagement folks are really uniquely positioned to support the work that each of our LSGTs can and should be doing inside of their schools, and sort of working to incorporate them into the work of LSGTs because they previously haven't been involved. The objective in doing so really is to try to move us in the direction of accomplishing that second part of the title and mission of our office, which is this notion of strategic partnerships. We are interested not specifically in just entering into partnership with any institution that's interested in partnering with us, but really being intentional about cultivating the type of partnerships that are going to advance the mission and the vision inside of each of our schools. And one of the initiatives that we're going to be launching, or relaunching, I should say, because again, this was part of our original plan in becoming a charter back in 2016, was to work directly with the Athens Wellbeing Project, which is a project that I was actually directly involved in several years ago, using some of that community level data to inform the decision-making of our local school governance team, so that they're not making decisions based on anecdotes, but that they've actually got neighborhood level data in front of them. One of the tasks that we're charging our LSGTs with in the fall is administering those Athens Wellbeing surveys to their parent populations so that we can get a representative data set inside of each of our schools so that our LSGTs have a clearer picture of what's going on in the communities surrounding those schools. One of the things that we recognize, and this was stated in our original charter contract, is that the neighborhoods and the sort of social conditions in the communities have a direct impact on student achievement. And so we're really interested in empowering our LSGTs to make data-driven decisions about how to respond to and address some of those community conditions, recognizing that they, as members of those communities, have unique perspective to offer in support of helping the principal to make school level decisions that will impact student achievement, but then also just recognizing that our schools are uniquely positioned to provide a whole host of supportive services to students and families. And so, but in order for them to do so effectively, they've got to have the best possible understanding of what's going on in those communities. And one of the ways that we're intending to approach that is by arming them with high quality data. Some of that data, of course, will depend on us entering into solid partnerships with existing institutions. We are, at this point, partnering with the Neighborhood Leaders Program. We're also in conversations with Athens Clarke County government, identifying which specific partnerships we can enter into with those folks that will allow us to advance the work of family and community engagement. Lastly, and specifically, I'll say, I mean, this is something that will be connected to the work that we'll be discussing during our call today, but one of the things that we recognize the need to equip not only our LSGTs with, but also our board and our cabinet members are innovation guides. I think one of the challenges that we've potentially faced as a district is this notion of innovation and flexibility is one that's been sort of nebulous and not quite clearly defined enough for us to make good use of it. I'm excited that we've got the panel, and I'm excited that we've got the host of presenters that we've got with us today who can get down into the details of what we could be doing as a charter system, because I think there's a tremendous amount of potential that we haven't yet realized and have the potential to realize. And so I think we're sort of on the verge of accomplishing something really tremendous in our community, but it's going to take us translating some of these ideas and concepts into operationalized processes that will allow us to make good on the flexibility that we've got access to. So innovation guides, both for school level and district level, are products that our office is working on and intending to pass on to support you guys in your planning and to support our principals and local LSGTs. And I'll pass it off to Lawrence to talk a bit about the Career Academy piece of our charter system. Switch your sound off. Yeah.
All right, so I don't know if Phil got my request to start his video so y'all can see him. Say, I know what this guy looks like. I appreciate him kind of going over what our office is over. As you all know, we have a college and career academy here in the Clarke County School District, a very successful career academy. Our career academy is part of our charter system contract. As you'll remember, many of the when we made that, the recommendation was made to the board to bring our career academy under our charter system contract. So it essentially is one of the innovations we have in the Clarke County School District. And so our career academy here in Athens very much focused on workforce development and economic development. We're all about the students being college and career ready when they graduate in partnership with Athens Technical College. And so as you all know, you've seen it over the years, it's grown, and not just enrollment, but programming. Thanks to the board for the vote to construct the manufacturing lab. I've had a chance to see some of the work they're doing in there, which is very exciting, not just for our industry partners such as Caterpillar, Eaton Power Partners, Carrier Transico, but very exciting opportunity for our students to learn a craft that they can take with them and keep enjoying. Sorry, folks, my computer went off. I don't know what happened. So again, our Career Academy being very successful has been grown over the past couple of years, and being a part of the charter system contract, when we apply for renewal, if that is the opportunity that we decide to take, we just want to make sure we're able to quote the data and just be able to show how our students have achieved in that program. So I'll pass the torch back to you, Russ.
All right, thanks, Lawrence and Fenwick. And we've also shared all the materials and videos and presentations that created along with the Fanning Institute back when we were delivering those four nights a month trainings for 12 to 14 months, the 4 quadrants when we would get everyone together and talk about the 8 content areas. So we've made sure the district has all of that available. So as you move ahead in designing new things, you have that as a background, and probably some materials you can use as well with a little bit of updating. So that's our support for the district. So we are right on cue and on time to begin with our 3 presenters, and we're going to begin with Cherie first. As I said, we took the 26 questions that we had and we organized them into the categories, and charter system requirements was the first category, and that's going to be Cherie's area of expertise. So Cherie, I think you can see the slide there. I think Fenwick is driving the presentation, so you all work together to walk through it. I will say that we won't be able to get to all of the slides today because we wanted to provide that opportunity for a panel coming in at 11 o'clock. But we thought it was important that you have all of the slides so that you could see some of the many other examples that we would share with you, if we had more time today. But Cherie, are you ready to kick off? Lawrence, can you tell what kind of issue we have here?
I'm looking now. Folks, this is what happens with technology.
This is not it.
Russ, can you confirm to Cherie the phone number ending in 2287?
I've got to look her up in my, maybe Lynn or Emily
That's
might.
me. 2287 is me.
Okay, all right.
Do I need to start over?
Are you, yeah, well, we didn't hear you, so,
Oh, okay, then I'll start over.
so I think, yeah, I think
All right.
we need to start over. So, and now, here is Cherie Sherman.
Okay, well, thank you, Russ, and thank you, Lawrence and Fenwick. Good to be back with everyone again. The presentation that we're about to share with you, we usually take about 4 hours, and so we're condensing a lot of material in a short amount of time. And this is what Emily and Lynn and I present across the state. And we think it's important for continuity so that everyone understands what's happening across the state and not just in their own district. And so what you're hearing is the same information that we deliver when the Charter System Foundation sends us out across. So this first part, I'm going to be talking about the very nuts and bolts of being a charter system. And if you go to the agenda topics, Lawrence, and I've got the PowerPoint up on my screen, and so I'm going to be clicking through with you on my screen. And we always start with what is a charter system, and that's where I'm going to start. What is effective governance for charter systems, and I'll touch on that. What is broad flexibility, and that's where Lynn will go. And then what are some examples of broad flexibility? And that's where Emily will pick up. And we did knit together the questions that were presented to us prior to today. So let's start with what is governance. Back in June of 2015, every school district in the state of Georgia had to make a decision. They had to make a decision on how they were going to operate. They could operate as a charter system. They could operate as what was called back then, IE squared, investing in educational excellence, or be a strategic waiver system is what they call it now, or remain status quo. Clarke chose to be a charter system, and that was a decision that the Clarke County School District Board of Education had to make and sign a contract with the State Board of Education. So the agreement is actually with your Board of Education and the State Board of Education. And there are several requirements if you were going to be a charter system. And one is that you had governance teams, or LSGTs, and different school districts call them different things. But it tells you right here what it is a charter system must do. You must maximize school level governance with the involvement of parents, teachers, and community members in such governance. So let's stop right there. So that's one requirement, is that if you are agreed to be a charter system, you're going to have a governance team at every one of your schools. And you have to have representatives of those groups on those governance teams. The state didn't tell you how many, but they did tell you that the preponderance of the membership had to be non-school district people. And then it went further to say, grant decision-making authority in personnel decisions, financial decisions, curriculum and instruction, resource allocation, establishing and monitoring the achievement of school improvement goals, and school operations. Now that got to be a sticky point across the state, across the years. Exactly what does that mean? That doesn't mean suddenly you have a group of people that are math curriculum directors. They're absolutely not. We have other people that do that in our school districts, but they have a governance team that's involved in decision-making in each of these areas. As a matter of fact, you have a contract that says you will do that, but it doesn't say how. You had to develop an application that would show how these decisions would be made and shared with the governance team. And just another reminder, the whole reason we have a charter system is to impact student achievement. That's what it's for. And the reason we have the governance teams is that those are the folks that are closest to the kids that we serve. So the whole idea was to bring back decision-making to the school level so that the school level could impact decisions that impact instruction closer to the students they serve. Now, there's a lot of ways that can happen, and that doesn't mean that the central office voice goes mute. It's just a different way of working. So let's go a little bit more. What is governance? Because honestly, across the state, people were really concerned, confused, and really weren't sure about this whole notion of having a governance team. But I can tell you now, those who have good functioning governance teams think it's the best thing that's ever happened. Because allies have formed in support of school work that's happening. And right here, this is the rule. The law makes it clear, that when you are a charter system, you remain under the control of the school board. That never went away. And a lot of school districts got confused with that. School board members thought that they no longer had authority, but they absolutely do. They had it before they were a charter system and as a charter system. What's different, truthfully, is the role of the superintendent. That changes the most because the school board still makes all the decisions they ever make. What's different is the input they're getting to make those decisions. You now have LSGTs who are making recommendations to the superintendent, and the superintendent, in turn, makes the recommendations to the board. And it's that relationship that has made a pivot across the state. But you have to be real clear. There's not a linear pathway or to-do book on how to do this. But you're developing the LSGTs so they can make informed decisions and recommendations to the superintendent, and then he or she makes it to the board. And these are recommendations because no one can decide except for your school board. That has never gone away. And as Dan said, we now have 48 charter systems. The newest one that will be July 1, their contract will start as Chattooga. But here you've got all the charter systems in the state. We're on slide 6, Fenwick. And everybody always likes to see who's on here and which systems are there. And of these 48 now charter systems, none have gone to be something else. They've all remained charter systems. As a matter of fact, we've had 6 of our charter systems that were strategic waivers that are converted over to being a charter system. In the original charter systems, they had 5-year contracts that were renewed to 10-year contracts. And when the Title I bill was reauthorized, everything went away. We could only renew for 5 years. And so that's why you see some of these renewals for 5 years and 10 years. The other thing that's kind of a little funny with the renewal dates is that we were permitted to adjust, and school districts could request an extension or to renew earlier so they would line up to their accreditation. It was called SACS and now it's Cognia, but you can line up so you're only preparing once. The other alignment that happened is school districts must have their college and career academies certified prior to renewal. And earlier when Lawrence mentioned the work with the college and career academy, that's real important because the two are hooked together. Now, there are some school districts where the college and career academy is outside of their charter system, but that is not the case in Clarke. So the two have to work in concert. And if you go down to slide 9, it says general governance team responsibilities. And I'm going to talk a little bit here about, because I was going back to one of the questions, actually several of the questions that came in earlier that Russ and Emily and Lynn and I looked at, is that what are the specific roles and activities? The state is really very broad in its definition about what the roles are. You have to have membership of those groups I mentioned earlier. Most of the folks have to be non-school people. They have to have authority in each of the areas that were listed. They adopt a school improvement plan, and that's a real important piece, is your governance team has to be fully aware of what's going on in that school, the good, bad, and the ugly. And not that we're going to come necessarily with instructional innovations, but they can be aware and be part of making decisions moving forward on what needs to be addressed. They need to be able to be part of the review process. We have some school districts where members of the LSGT are actually members of the school improvement team. You want that group to be fully aware of what's going on and contributing when they can. They become allies once they can understand the variables that are going on in that school. They can help in the identification of programs that can help, ways that we can operate differently, and different innovations that can be used to help impact student achievement. They can provide, and they should provide, some input into the school's annual budget. Right now, we are facing some very difficult times across the state with the 14% reduction in all of our budgets, and we're all trying to figure out how are we going to do this. Most school districts are going to have to do some furlough days, 5 to 10 is normal, and people are having to cut positions, et cetera. This is the time you bring in your LSGT and let them be fully aware of what's going on so they can help and they can be your voice out there for decisions that you're going to have to make. They must be involved in hiring of the principal, and there's not any one way to do it. Some school districts have members of the LSGT as a part of the interview team. Other school districts, the superintendent will narrow down the selection to top 3 and present it to the LSGT and let them interview and recommend to the superintendent, or just the reverse. There's no one way of doing it, but you have to articulate how you're going to do it, and your LSGT needs to be fully aware. And if you're on an LSGT, and I'm now on slide 10, you have to behave. You have to be nice, and you have to respect the people that are there. And the best LSGTs are those who are the most diverse. You don't want people with all the same backgrounds. You want parents who teach there, you want community people that are invested in that school because they need workers that are coming out of there. They want a contributing, citizenry, and so they have a vested interest in that school being successful. And so the more varied your group is, the stronger you are. Your principal is always a member of the LSGT, always, but they're not the chair because we tend to get very bossy, and I can say that as a former principal. We take over, and we need to be able to share that responsibility. But that doesn't mean that we as principals cannot help shape the agenda and the activity that's going on. Certainly, Zernona helps to form the agenda for her board meetings, but she has a board chair who executes it. But Zernona's voice is very much a part of that, and such is true for your LSGTs. You've got to respect the chain of command. Sometimes members get on these LSGTs and they get confused on their role. They're not the ones telling staff what to do or telling students what to do or any of that. That's not their job. That's the principal's job. The principal's job remains to run and manage the building. And so we have some of our LSGTs or school districts who actually will print up like little business cards. If you have a question, you need to go to the principal and talk about that, and not get into discussion of personnel and issues and things that are going on in the school. You represent all students. You're not just looking after the cheerleaders or the football team. You're looking after every single student that's in that building. And you have to follow the open records and open meetings laws. You post your agendas. You post your minutes, you post your meeting dates, and you have to meet at least 6 times a year, but it's recommended that you meet every month that you're in operation. So most LSGTs meet about 10 times a year. And it's best to meet on the same day, very much like your school board does, and have those meetings posted and the minutes, et cetera. A lot of systems use their Assembly web-based program because that's what their community is used to, and that makes it easier for everyone. but you must operate openly. And you have to work with your LSUT members to make sure that if there are issues out there, to bring that to the principal so the principal can address it. Chances are they already know, whatever it is that they're talking about. But it's best that LSUT members not resolve it, but bring it straight on to the principal. You got to work collaboratively, be nice, and respect the different voices that are coming there. If you don't agree with something that's said or talked about, you got to go with it. It's just like a school board. You can't say they said we had to do that. No, it's always we. You got to get your pronouns in check. We speak in one voice. Individually, no member has authority, but as a group, you do. And if you're a member of LSUT, you are a mandatory child abuse reporter, and that's important. And this is basically a structure looking at slide 11. This is just, a crude, overview, but you have the school board who determines the district budget and approves personnel, a lot of other things. And you have a superintendent who develops the budget and then directs and selects district personnel. And then you have the principal who then develops the school level budget and recommends, manages, and evaluates all the school personnel at the school level. And then you have teachers who actually instruct and support students. And that's a hierarchy. The LSUT comes into the picture by working with the principal and group to make recommendations to the superintendent and to the board. And that was another question here, asking about board relations. We have found the most successful LSUTs have a good working relationship with their school boards. They're fully aware of what's going on in the schools, and they've developed a process to communicate. In some school districts, they have like quarterly presentations from LSUTs to the board, not long, just a few minutes. Like, this is what we're working on, and these are some challenges, and this is where we're going. This is how we've used flexibility. These are some innovations we're working on. And that helps to keep it fully up on the table. When I was the assistant superintendent in Madison County and I was in charge of charter system work there, my task was to report to the board every month, anytime that we used our flexibility in keeping it wide open so everyone knew if it was at the school level or district level, and then posting it up on our website so it was a very public conversation about how we were taking advantage of being a charter system. And that's important, but no one's going to tell you how to do that. You have to make it work within your structure. And I'm losing some words on all this. Okay. I want to go back to something that I meant to talk a little bit more, because there was a question here about renewal. Clarke County is coming up to the end of their contract period. And you as a system have to make a decision about if you're going to renew your contract. And I should say, make an application to renew your contract, because that does not happen automatically. And I want to review what that process is all about. And this takes in several of the questions that came out. And I've already gone over this generally with Lawrence and Fenwick, but you have an application, and it's up on the website. And it's very short. It used to be very involved, but it's gotten very streamlined and much easier unless they change it. And there's several things we want to know. What were your goals? Did you meet your goals? If you did not, why not? And when Clarke initially applied for their application, the standards were different. And truthfully, the standards have changed every year. With the different tests and different things that we have to look at, we no longer every AYP is gone, but back in the day, that's what we had to look at, what AYP. And so that's gone, and that was the language that was in there. So if you're in education in the state of Georgia, those goals and those tests have changed every year. But at the end of the day, what they're looking for all charter schools and charter systems, by the way, is to achieve at or above the state average. So that's your mark. And what happens is every year we have to submit a progress report to the, excuse me, a progress report to the DOE, and it's due November 1. And in that, we talk about the innovations and how we're working, et cetera. But we also put in there our achievement. And those are public documents that I urge you to look at, and Lawrence can make sure you have a copy of it. And that shows how your achievement is going, because that's one of the issues that they're going to be asking about. How are you doing? How's your achievement? And if you're not meeting your goals, they want to know why not, and what are you going to do about it? And this is all part of your application. They also want to know, and this is another question somebody had, you receive a little over $87 per student for your being a charter system. And that's the QBE dollars that are people lobby for. Actually, that's part of the work Dan does for you and other charter systems, is making sure the best that they can that you get those dollars every year. And they want you to have those dollars to impact student achievement, to support innovation. Well, they want to know how you're spending it. And so you have to answer a question about that. And then you also have some accounting measures that will, show, by how we code those funds. But they want to support you. They want you to innovate. They want you to use flexibility, and they want to know that it's working and impacting student achievement. And that's what the renewal application is about. You have to complete a contract, and it's a template up on the website. And you fill in various information, but the biggest one in there talks about your innovations, typically 1 to 4, no more than 4, that you want to work toward and be responsible for in your next contract. And you have to articulate those. You have assurances that your board will have to sign off on, and then you have to also sign off on a governance matrix, going back to those areas that that your governance team has authority, and how you're going to execute that authority. What does it look like? What does it look like now, and what will it look like in 5 years? And so those are the pieces that go in. That's completed. It gets turned into the state. There's a group called the CAC, the Charter Advisory Committee, that reviews your application. Typically, they visit your site. It may be virtual now, and they will ask some questions to make sure, and this was another question that somebody asked, if you are actually executing your LSGTs, do people actually have authority? Are they actually making decisions? And those are the questions they'll ask. And that is part of your contract, is to make sure that that is happening. And then they, in turn, will make a recommendation to the DOE staff, who in turn will make a recommendation to the State Board of Education. So it's a process, and it is an examination. And whether or not they will hold you to each of those, it varies per application. But I tell you, they do take a look at your work and what's happened over the last 5 years. I think I'm reviewing my questions that we received from you, and I think I've pretty much hit all the pieces there. But I want to come back to this. See if there's any other questions. Russ, on my screen, the PowerPoint is not coming up. Could you tell me?
You're on slide 11, so is there a slide you want to advance to?
Tell me what's on that slide.
This is the charter system governance structure that you covered with the,
Okay, we can move on.
Yeah, so that's slide 11. So,
Okay, take me to 12.
and we've got about 5-8 minutes.
Okay, Ross, I can't see the slide. For some reason, the rest of them have, they're blank on my screen. I don't know what happened with that. If you could tell me what's on that slide.
So this is the local school governance team authority and decision making. And it's establishing and monitoring achievement of school improvement goals and the best practices.
Okay, I did that. Okay. Well, I think I made it, but even though my screen is now in blank for some reason, that is the first section, looking at what is a charter system. So your obligation is to have your LSGTs functioning. Your obligation is to make sure you're spending the dollars properly that you get for a QBE, and you're very public about this. Everyone should be well aware of the dollars that you get from being a charter system and how they're spent. And your LSGT should be well aware of all of the school improvement plans and how they're being executed, and if they're working or not. And probably the most important thing is making sure, and there's nothing wrong with having district level boundaries, but say what they are and where the LSGTs can work and where they have authority and where they have latitude. And that's about it.
Okay.
So that's the first section.
All right.
So I think I'm there.
We're right on time. So very good. Thanks, Cherie. The second area that we organized your questions was in the flexibility and flexibility options. So we're going to ask Lynn to come forward now and review that. Lynn?
Thank you. Okay, if you could go to slide 20, please. Thank you. One of the things that I was really appreciative of hearing Fenwick's, one of his comments, he said that you all wanted to really start looking at your neighborhood data and focusing on what's going on in those neighborhoods and addressing challenges that your students have. Well, that's what flexibility is all about. It is about identifying challenges, figuring out solutions, looking at resources that you all have, and looking at how you create opportunities for your students that meet the needs of your students. And that is what flexibility is all about. If you look at this first slide that's on the screen now, you'll see that the definition of broad flexibility is that freedom granted to charter systems that allows them to waive most of what we call Title 20. Well, Title 20 is a section of Georgia law that governs education. We have 180 school systems in our state. They're all very, very, very different. And Title 20 is a very prescriptive, very comprehensive, and kind of takes a very generalized approach to governing education. The State Board of Education also establishes rules and regulations that support the laws that are passed in Title 20. So with 180 school systems and all of those being very, very different, as you can well imagine, it's hard to put a one-size-fits-all model into place. And so that's what this whole idea of broad flexibility is about. As Cherie mentioned, it is intended to be used to design and implement innovations, to address challenges, to use resources more effectively, so that the end game of everything is advancing student achievement and supporting your school improvement plan and creating those opportunities that are going to be very advantageous to your students. And I always like to think of broad flexibility as being a tool. And it's a tool that allows charter systems to basically customize education and programs and the delivery of instruction to fit the needs of the students in that community and to fit the needs of the community, which is exactly what your College and Career Academy does as it looks at the workforce development needs. Now, if we could go on to number 21, please. One of the questions that you all asked, you wanted to know what can and cannot be waived. And that's pretty easy because you have very few things that you cannot have flexibility over. One is federal laws. You cannot have flexibility over federal laws. However, we do have made some inroads so that we're able to do a little bit more with funding, federal funding, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But primarily, you cannot waive any state, federal, or local laws or rules or guidelines that deal with civil rights, that deal with health, safety, and well-being of staff, students, visitors in your building, and that deal with accountability. So I think the question came up, can you waive the state testing? Well, the answer to that is no, because that is part of our accountability. And you cannot waive things that are part of the accountability. Cherie mentioned we don't have AYP anymore. We do have our federal accountability that our state has through the college, the CCRPI, our College and Career Readiness Performance Index. So anything that deals with accountability, the reporting requirements, all those things cannot be waived. But if we go to 22, let's look at some of the things that you can waive. And what we've done here is to just give you some common uses that we find in a lot of systems. And this certainly does not, it's not comprehensive by any stretch of the imagination, because you really can waive everything else in Title 20 and under the State Board of Education rules and guidelines. And Emily and I will be giving you examples of how school districts have done that. All right, so if we could go over to 23, we have a lot of facts, but we also have a lot of myths. And it's important to understand the facts and not believe the things that are myths and the things that are rumors. The charter systems don't have to ask anybody in Atlanta for permission every time it exercises broad flexibility. However, as Cherie said earlier, most of our school districts do have protocol in place so that the board is aware of how flexibility is being used, so that there is a systemic use of that flexibility, and that's not just done, kind of as a willy-nilly sort of thing, that it has a purpose, and that purpose is very important. And being able to use your flexibility intentionally and with a purpose to increase student achievement is extremely important. It doesn't look the same. The use of flexibility does not look the same in all systems. What may be a very innovative use of flexibility in a small rural district may not look the same as what an innovative use of flexibility would be in a larger district or in a district in a different part of the state. It is very important that you align the use of your waivers to your district strategic plan and to the school improvement plan, and that you use it to implement innovations that are going to improve overall student achievement. Your school governance teams should have input into the development and implementation of those innovations and how your flexibility is used. Especially how it's being used in their own schools and how it's being used in schools that are feeder schools, for example, because they're going to be sharing those same students. And I think it's also a really good idea that your school governance teams understand some of the district-wide uses of flexibility, because everybody needs to have information that's accurate information so that they can operate most effectively. And as a superintendent, one of the things I appreciated so much about our charter system flexibility is that we could exercise the use of that flexibility as we had challenges to arise. And through the COVID pandemic, we have seen some very, very innovative and very unique uses of flexibility throughout our state. So if we could go to number 12, please. And what I want to do here is just to show you a few examples, and we have a lot of examples here, but what I want to do is focus on the ones that are most pertinent to some of the questions that you had asked. And the way that we've set this up is we've given a challenge that a school might be facing or a system might be facing. We've given the state board rule number, or we've given the section of law that may be preventing a school or a school district from being able to meet that challenge. And then we've given a solution that that school district can use, or that school can use, when they are able to use the flexibility. So in this particular one, you all had asked about equity. And in this particular one, this is a good example of how a charter system can address that equity issue. We have a lot of students who don't qualify for programs according to the program criteria and the eligibility criteria that is given in our state laws and state board rules. But we have a solution that is used in a lot of charter systems where students are served by need and not by label, where you don't make those kids eligible to be served in the gifted program, but you can serve those students and meet their needs. You're not going to get any additional funding, but you are going to be able to serve those students in those classes without being penalized. And that's a huge, huge issue. We call that served by need and not by label. We have school districts using that with special ed students, with gifted students, with remedial students, ESOL. We just have a lot of different ways it's being used. So if we could go to number 25, you had a question, number 25. You had a question about experiential learning. And this gives you a good example of how a school or a school system can look at creating an alternative education program that meets student needs. And so in this particular example, we've shown you how you could just basically design a program, let's say in grades 5 through 12, to create a lot of different opportunities, not only for remediation and acceleration, but credit recovery for non-traditional pathways, high school diploma, for students to get a technical college certificate or even an associate degree while they're still in high school. So that is a really good example of that experiential learning. And that learning doesn't have to take place in the confines of a classroom. We'll go over to 27. You had asked about retention and recruitment of teachers and staff. So our next three, 27, 28, and 29, really all talk or speak to how you can use your flexibility to help recruit and retain your teachers. One is through certification waivers. And I know this is especially an issue with your college and career academy, because our business partners tell us that our students benefit so much from having instructors who are actually practitioners, who are actually in the field. For example, an RN or a chef who teaches culinary arts. Well, these folks who have 15, 20 years experience in their fields really don't want to go back to school and get go back and get 18, 20 hours, whatever they have to get, or another degree in order to have a certification. So you can waive certification. There is a way of doing that. There is a code that you send into the state when you send in your personnel reporting, and you're not penalized for waiving that certification. You still get state money for those teachers. With a lot of our small rural systems that can't find certified teachers in the arts. And so they've used local artists, they've used technology professionals to be able to serve those students. Okay, if we could go to number 28. This gives you an example of how you can kind of use your allotments in a way that fits your needs of your students, but also fits into your staffing availability, where you may not, the state requires you, for example, to have a full-time media specialist, but if that doesn't fit in with what you need to do at your school, then you can split that position. You might have a half-time media specialist and a half-time math coach. That could be the same person. It could be two different people. And one of the things that I have found in my career working in personnel is that a lot of times we lose really, really good teachers because many of our teachers want to stay home with their children when they're younger. And so there are all kinds of ways that you can create staffing patterns that will allow you to serve your students and also allow you to retain and recruit really good teachers. The last one is on 29, and that one deals with salary requirements. You can waive the teacher salary schedule. It is allowable, and we have that happening in school districts, especially when they're working with people who are coming out of the field. And people who've been in the medical field, for example, as a nurse for 15 or 20 years. They don't want to start over as a year one teacher salary. So you can actually negotiate salary to some extent. We also have, in some of our systems, we have some systems that are looking at a pay for performance grants program. One of the things I did as a superintendent is that I had 49% staff, retired staff who had come back 49%, and I contracted with them on a set amount, and that really served our district very, very well. If you look at slide 30 and 31 and 32, you're going to see examples of how you can use your flexibility with financial in finances. The slide 30 talks about how you can actually take that state allotment that you get, those state funds, and instead of using them and spending them the way the state tells you to spend them, you can actually use those funds to meet the needs of your school improvement plan or your district strategic plan. And you can spend funds in areas where you need to spend those funding. And I think Emily's going to give you a lot of examples of how that happens. If you look at slide 30, that slide talks about how we can consolidate funding. We are able to do that to some extent with federal funding. And so that is being used in some of our districts around the state. And then lastly, if you look at 32, you'll see that you have those charter system funds that Cherie mentioned a few minutes ago. And the charter system funds can be used in a very, very broad sense. They're able to be used with to meet the needs of your school improvement plans, to meet the needs of your schools, and they can be carried over from year to year. And then the last example that I have on slide 33 talks a little bit more about this experiential learning, and it focuses on how you can actually really revise your entire, well, this one particular one is a middle school, but you could revise the entire middle school calendar for the year and the school day. And you can provide opportunities for things like career exploration by restructuring that school day. Or you can give added opportunities for students to have some of those very important social and emotional support services and programs. We've even had some of our districts to use this, especially with their middle schools, and help them get started with their technical, their career and technical courses, especially if they have a college and career academy, the way you all do. Those kids can kind of get a jump start with that. So these are just a few examples to show you how flexibility is really that tool that you all can use to create the solutions to those challenges that you have identified. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Great examples there. And I know there are even other examples in the presentation that people can look at. And if we need to follow up with anyone, we certainly can with more. So the third area that we organized your questions was in innovation. And we're now going to ask Emily to come forward and share many innovations. So, Emily?
Well, before we begin the individual slides and the different items that I can share with you, I do want to say that there was a question about inequity. And when you really think about charter systems, you need to think about one thing first and foremost, and that is the needs of students, the individual students, students in individual communities, individual schools. And then the second thing is no excuses. It really takes away any excuses for trying to use what you have differently to make a difference. Sometimes we tend to dwell on the word waivers, but not everything you do as a charter system, not everything your local governance teams will do requires state waivers. They do require flexibility and creative ideas using what you have. So I always break it down into four things. You need to use flexibility for time, for talent, which is all your personnel, for your limited resources and funds, because of course there are never enough of those, just like there's never enough time. And you also have to use your partnerships differently. So when you think about inequity, think about the school budgets and using time, talent, limited resources, and partnerships differently to make a difference for the students in that school. I would also say that sometimes it doesn't, not only are you dealing with thinking about waivers, sometimes it's about board policies. And sometimes your governance teams may come to you and say, this board policy for graduation might need to be revised if we're going to be able to do this. That will really help us graduate more students and give them better opportunities. And it may show up in different places. When Marietta started as a charter system, and you may or may not know the demographics of Marietta, but it's approximately 43% African-American, 37% Hispanic, and then maybe about 19 or 20% Caucasian. So diversity was always part of it, and equity was always part of what we did. So I'm going to start first by sharing some districts. They are from all over the state. I will tell you that although the first four charter systems were Marietta and City of Decatur, Marietta did not really work much with City of Decatur. I reached out more and connected with some of the interesting things they were doing in Dublin, and that's going to be one of our panelists today. And Fulton County, which is certainly enormously larger than we and more complex in many, many different ways. So if we can go to slide 35, I'm taking you all to Calhoun City, where they decided to capture kids' hearts. And I'm going to go through these in a sequence so that we can stay on time. The challenge there was that they needed to engage children more. And they decided they needed social emotional learning. So the innovation was capturing kids' hearts. What was the flexibility needed? They needed to consolidate their funding. And consolidated funding means they needed some money from their state funds, they needed money from local funds, and they may have needed some federal funds, and they were able to consolidate those. They had to change what they were doing and the way they were doing professional learning, and they hired a teacher and leader development specialist. That was a new position, something I had never done before. The local school governance team supported the use of the consolidation of funds that was necessary. And the results were improved behavior, improved attendance, and more involvement in extracurricular. If we could skip on to 39, because I want to show something else Calhoun did, and then we're going to go back. Calhoun is always searching for ways to do things better, and so are you, and so are every other school district. So strategically, they found the challenge, and they found that students were coming to their pre-K and they lacked simple vocabulary and readiness skills. They weren't ready. So their innovation was the Jacket Junction Mobile Learning Lab. And there's a picture on the next slide as well, I think, possibly, yes. And what they did for flexibility is they consolidated their funding again. They provided, wait a minute, hold on there. No, that's something different on that one. They started the Jacket Junction Mobile Learning Lab, Crayons to Careers. And the Mobile Learning Lab that had early childhood education pathway students developing and delivering instruction, go to the housing authority properties and to a local daycare. They also worked from children ages 6 to 4 years, and they engaged parents and the children. The flexibility was seat time for their high school students, scheduling, and time for the high school students, curriculum delivery, who was delivering this curriculum, and they used lots of partnerships to get this off the ground. You will notice that every slide I show, or most of them, has a contact person if you want to follow up. The local school governance team had to approve the use of funds and curriculum development, that delivery for the early childhood education and teaching as a pathway. The results were pre and post assessment, showed improved readiness skills. They're having ongoing data collection. It's been a rough year for that. Early childhood education and teaching as a pathway students received experiences that they never could have had otherwise. If you'll go back to slide 37, please. Dawson County Schools. Their challenge was they had 2 small middle schools, 1 high school, and in your situation, you might be able to think feeder schools, personnel and resources and outcomes for their could not be used well to meet the needs to give the fragile learners and the acceleration to other kids that needed it. They were ready for it. So what did they do? They had a 2-year realignment. So they developed a 6th and 7th grade middle school, an 8th and 9th grade junior high school, and their high school was 10th through 12th grade. What flexibility did they use? They waived middle school program criteria. and possibly some certification so that some teachers might have been teaching something that they couldn't normally teach to middle school kids that they were certified in high school to teach. Local school governance team had extensive involvements. Those teams that were involved in these schools had many, many meetings to gather input and plan each step of the process. In fact, the 2 years phase-in was their recommendation. The results: improved school climate, increased opportunities for students, and it should show up in their future graduation rates. Page 38. Do we do that? Okay. Let's go on to 43, Lumpkin. You're going to see more, some of these others. There's others in here, but I'm just highlighting some. The challenge in Lumpkin was they wanted something that they could provide to students that would integrate STEAM and not compete with current CTAE or arts programs. And they wanted to draw on the rich tradition of that county's music excellence and talent. The innovation is music industry pathway. They used flexibility. They used charter flexibility to create a new and unique pathway. Local governments teams that were used, they became involved and highly supportive after student interest was first determined. So once the school found and the district found that there was interest, then it's time, let the local governance team act on it, discuss it, think about it, provide input. The results were this in the first year, and this was to be the first year, 243 out of 1,156 registered for one of the 3 courses offered. $30,000 worth of equipment was donated by Zach Brown, a former student. Once again, some of your partnerships out there can really enrich the pathways that you provide for students. If you'll go on to 45, Candler County. Not all districts have the funds to provide high interest classes and opportunities for students. So how do you get it done? Because Candler County just could not afford to do it. Their innovation was using community experts to teach a variety of high interest classes. And that certification issue and question keeps coming forward. So let's see how one district was able to use this. They hired local, not certified people to teach high interest classes. And it became a win-win for those in their community who really had exceptional talents. They were making a living providing dance lessons and other things. The results were students in that district now have access to art, music, chorus, dance, computer repair, and video repair. And they expanded it to growing their own teachers. As seniors were being paid for their as teaching assistants for their service, as were the tech students for helping to repair computers. So when you really think about these particular districts thus far that I am showing you, their flexibility was waived. But what do you need in your schools? What do your individual schools feel they don't have? How can they use their funding differently? How is you as a district look at this? So the next one we will go to is Atlanta Public Schools. And the reason I'm showing this one, we're going to have a great panelist from Atlanta, is that this one is specific to governance teams and what they can do. Atlanta has an elementary school called Burgess Peterson Academy. The contact down at the bottom is the principal. Okay, it's not a district contact. It's not a state contact. The challenge there is that they were having competition from other schools that was causing dwindling enrollment. They went from close to 500 down to 350. And you know, when that happens, you begin to lose programs and you begin to lose valuable staff. So the morale in the school was also suffering. What did the local school governance team say? They said, no, we are going to fight for our school. And what they did is they developed a vision statement and actions that would enable them to make their vision reality. And they focused on early literacy. They felt that if they became an international baccalaureate PYP school, they would have a brand and a new way of instruction, a new way to professionally develop their teachers. And they needed to do better outreach in the community. The flexibility that they ended up using was in some certification and scheduling for instruction. The local school governance team didn't just provide input, they inspired this. And so when you look at the members that are on your local governance team, how powerful is that? The results were, at that particular point in time, their strategic planner became an exemplar for APS. They were leading the district's work in Orton-Gillingham strategy to improve literacy. They improved literacy outcomes, and now I believe they're in their year 4. And their enrollment increased by 25%. I did question whether or not they did some redistricting. And they said at the beginning of the year, there was a very, very small redistricting, possibly brought 40 students, but certainly didn't bump them up 25%. And once again, the contact is there. The next one I'm going to ask you to go to is Marietta on 47 and 48. This is, the challenge was, and I was there and did this pilot, too many ESOL students were staying in ESOL for too long. They needed to exit ESOL in the younger grades. They should not still be in ESOL by the time they get to middle school, and certainly not in high school if they've been in your school district. Struggling students, those who struggle in reading especially and in mathematics, when they do not go to school all those summer weeks and months, they do not have enriching experiences or academics. They have something called summer slide or regression, whatever it is called, but they lose what they learned. It is compounded from many ESOL students who hear and speak no English over that time. So how do you make a difference? The innovation was extended year ESOL as a pilot. And summer programs are very expensive when you want to get a number of students throughout the district, and you want to, you really want to provide a number of different things. Transportation's expensive, everything's expensive. So the innovation was identifying 120 students in grades 1 through 3. The student selection was based on their MAP skills. I don't know what formative assessments you use in Clarke. I don't remember, I probably did know. But the student selection was those who could possibly with a little extra time and a little springboard into the next school year could test out of the ESOL program. The difference was, the big difference is ESOL teachers flexed their work days. They taught 20, they had 20, they worked 21 days in June. One of those was planning. 20 were 20 school days for students, and in exchange for 21 days off spread out during the school year. There are lots of days when the students might not have been critical for them to have that teacher ESOL separate program. Things could have been done a different way, online programs that they have or whatever. But this was voluntary, and we had a number of ESOL teachers step up, and we did have 120 students identified. About 100 of them came all the time, all 20 days, or at least very close to it. And what did that help? What did that help do? It helped save the cost of labor over the summer, which is the biggest expense that you have of the teacher's salaries. And for some teachers, it was something that they really liked. For some teachers, it would not be something they'd want to do again. So you would just have to see who would be willing to do it and make it happen, or you could require it of some ESOL teachers in some schools where they have a lot of these teachers. It focused on academics, enrichment activities, and ESOL. It provided transportation, parent classes with childcare, an online option if they wanted to bring their older siblings to just work on their own independent work through the school program. Program flexibility was in program scheduling for students and teacher work days, repurposing of federal funds. And what you really need to know is that what we used for flexibility, the biggest part, was that we did not follow the state requirement for 45 minutes of ESOL every day for students. They were now going to not have 20 days during the year. However, this was a district level initiative, not one designed by a local LSGT. The results were, there was a 56% increase in MAP. 56% of students increased their MAP scores when they came back to school. There was little or no regression in the cohort. Then you had to think about the fact that they actually had more hours than they would have had 45 minutes a day. So they had more instruction this way. And then the bigger picture for this is you can use something like this for extended day, EIP, changing the hours that people work during the day, EIP, remedial, gifted, or whatever you needed it to be. That's what I have to share. I hope I'm within my time. I would just like once again to remind you the key things are time, talent, limited resources, partnership, no excuses, and student focus. And I think through all of those, I have answered the questions. One had to do with, let's see, certification being waived. That's come up several times. How does this work with FTE being earned? And have districts noticed high quality outcomes? And does it generate better hiring and retention of staff? I think the new generation coming in likes to have voice, and the new generation coming in would love to be able to say that they are working for an innovative school district, because that's how they think. So I think I hopefully have answered all your questions and given you some information. There are many more systems in here for you to look at, and we refresh them as time goes on as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. We've just got a couple of minutes before we're going to break and get ready for our panelists to come online. I did want to forward Lynn and Cherie in a couple of minutes that we have, if there was a thought that came during the presentations that maybe an extra thought you wanted to share, wanted to afford that at this time. So Lynn or Cherie?
One of the things that I did, and I apologize, I completely forgot to talk about slide 26, and that was a really important slide. One of the questions you all had was about promotion retention, and we've had a number of our school districts, our charter systems in the state, to create their own promotion retention policies. And what they have done is they have chosen to look at promotion retention based on totality of information and not on just one test score on one day, as our state board rule basically requires. So one of the things that we've seen going on around our state is that students receive instruction based on their needs. And again, we go back to that need, not label. And this one is basically they're receiving instruction based on their need and not their grade level designation. In many cases, these students are going on grade level with their other classes, and then the areas where they have some weaknesses, they are receiving that instruction, they are mastering those standards, and then they are catching back up to their grade levels. So, and in some cases, sometimes that is running in a parallel way. So, again, it is not a solution, one solution that fits everybody, but it is a solution that you look at your data, you look at, as Emily said, your talent, you look at your challenges, and then you figure out what is going to work best for your students and your community.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn. Want to mention that each year the Charter System Foundation hosts a conference at the Georgia Center, and Carl Vinson Institute is a part of that as well. And the conference this year is September 29th and 30th. And the first day of the conference really deals with all of our member systems coming together and sharing their best practices, their flexibility, innovation. It's just a full day of great ideas, and you get to intersperse with everyone and talk about it during the breaks, et cetera. So I know Clarke in the past has sent several representatives to the conference. I mean, it's right in your back door, but did want to say September 29th and 30th, put that on your calendar. Registration is up on the foundation's website, and so we're ready to go with that. All right, we are at a breaking point here, and so the presenters are going to kind of hang around waiting for our panelists to come on board, but everyone else certainly take a break, and we will get started back at 11 o'clock.
You, Russ.
Good day, Lynn. How you doing?
Hi.
Who is this, Lynn? Oh, you're still on mute.
This is Reagan. She's my helper.
This is Reagan that we've heard so much about.
Yes, say hello to everybody. She is my huge helper. Tell them what you did this morning. No, you got to speak up.
I made up the bed.
She made up the bed.
Oh, wow.
Surprised me.
Awesome.
Well, I'm going to go work, so you take off, okay? Bye.
Bye, everybody.
She says goodbye, everybody.
Oh.
How is everyone?
Doing well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thank y'all so much for doing this. This is wonderful. Thank you. So we should be able to start real close to 11.
We'll get started in a couple of minutes at 11 o'clock. Lynn, are all of our panelists on board? Have we everybody arrived?
Hello, Lynn. Russell, how are you doing? Morris Lees.
All right, hello.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Fred Williams.
Morning, Fred.
Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Morris.
How you
All
doing
right.
over in Dublin?
We're doing pretty well. How about you?
Good, good. Yes, sir.
We have everybody.
Great.
We'll just give it 1 more minute. All right, I have 11 o'clock, so let's go ahead and proceed with our panel. I think everybody's back on board who's in the session, and want to share with them that we have cabinet level staff at the Clarke County School District and Clarke County Board of Education members with us this morning. In addition to our 3 consultants from the Charter System Foundation and our Executive Director, Dan Weber. And I do want to remind everyone that we're live streaming on YouTube at this time. So Lynn, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce our panel, let them begin the process.
Thank you very much. We are very, very fortunate to have 4 wonderful practitioners, professionals, leaders in charter systems. And I work with these folks all the time, as does Cherie and really all of us, Emily and everybody. And these people are just absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much for taking your time to be with us. Normally when we do a panel discussion, we kind of pass the mic along, but we can't do that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is if you will just mute yourself, and I'm going to ask you to respond, and then that way we won't have all of us open mics at the same time, and that will eliminate some of that feedback that we're getting. All right, so first of all, what I'd like to do is to ask you, and if you would introduce yourselves and just give us a brief overview of your school system, and also tell us why your system became a charter system. So we're going to start with Carolyn Barnett from Atlanta Public Schools. So Carolyn, would you please start us off?
Good morning, everyone. I'm wondering why she started with Carolyn Barnett. I guess it's B. I remember being in high school, I was a T, a Thomas, so I was always at the last of the line. So thank you for my husband. I was able to be first today. Good morning, I'm Carolyn Barnett from Atlanta Public Schools. I am the Director for Charter System and School Governance. Many people know Atlanta's journey. You ask why we became a charter system. Once we looked at all of the other options, we realized that where we were 4 years ago, Atlanta's culture, our academic programs, our talent management, our system and resources, those all were challenging at that time. And so when you look at the tenets of the charter system and you look at the community work that needs to be done, the parent engagement that has to be there, we just felt that the first thing we needed to get right if we wanted to transform our system was our culture. And I think that the charter system allowed us to improve our culture in such a way to where we are still standing. And not that we are like 100%, but I think we've come a long way.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we could go to Dr. Lease down in Coffee County. So Morris, could you pick up next?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Lynn, and we appreciate the opportunity to share with this group. I'm the superintendent in Coffee County, the Coffee County school system. We have approximately 7,700 students. We have 8 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 2 high schools. One of our high schools is a traditional comprehensive high school, and the other high school is a college and career academy that serves as a second small high school choice in our county. So we have 12 schools. We're a diverse community. We have a 30% Hispanic community, around 30% African American, and then around 40% Caucasian. So we're diverse. We're in South Georgia, and our local economy is based in manufacturing and agriculture. And so we are one of the larger counties in our area. We went down the charter system path. Of course, as was already cited, we had the opportunity to make a choice about 7 years ago about which path we would go. And we went through a comprehensive strategic planning process, and we worked with Bill Barr, who has, of course, worked with a lot of school systems across the state over the years. And Dr. Barr facilitated our strategic planning, and we used the Vision Project model that was being used and incorporated through the Georgia School Board Association at that time. So we had a comprehensive strategic planning process, and as we worked through that process and we met with various stakeholder groups, we met with stakeholders in the city of Ambrose, in the city of Broxton, in the city of Douglas. We met with teachers, we met with students. And as we met with groups of stakeholders, it became apparent that we needed a model that allowed for governance at the local lowest level. And we had some issues in Coffee County around 10 years ago with governance, and it caused some issues with accreditation. And so there was a need to take the leadership and the decision-making and governance closer to the people, closer to the stakeholders. And so we felt like charter system did that, and it allowed our school level teaching staff, our administration, our classified staff, our parents, our business partners, all to be part of managing our schools and governing our schools. So we've had the opportunity to hire multiple principals using the process, and so it's been very good for us. But really, it was the governance piece is why we went charter system.
Thank you very much. Ms. Reese, Catoosa County, can we hear from Catoosa next?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dina Reese, and I'm the superintendent of Catoosa County Public Schools. We're about as far north as you can go. If Coffee County's in South Georgia, we're far north, and we're actually about 15 miles south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're considered to be the gateway to Georgia because we're the first county in Georgia that you enter if you're traveling south on I-75. We have 11,000 students in our district, 3 high schools, 3 middle schools, 10 elementary schools, a performance learning center, and an online academy. We plan to open a college and career academy, which will be a standalone college and career academy in August of 2022. So we are deep into the planning for our college and career academy. Over 50% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. However, we have a unique challenge in Catoosa County. We're a small geographic county, but very different poverty levels in our school district. For example, we can have one elementary school that has 80% of the students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. And just about 6 miles across the county, another elementary will have 20% of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So each school has their own unique challenges. And so we became a charter system in 2016. When we looked at the models, the Board of Education had a reputation for always asking for community input. And we have a very supportive community. And so the charter system model really reflected what we were already doing. We all had very involved school councils within our schools. And so we knew we could make the transition to local school governance teams because really that's the kind of model we were already following. And we knew that we also wanted to put the local decision making as close to the student as possible. And so having local school governance teams in our schools actually helped because we knew that each school had their own unique challenges as far as improving student achievement. And so that's why we chose the charter system model.
Thank you. And now, Dr. Williams, will you tell us about Dublin City, please?
Good morning, and I'm glad to be here, everyone, to share and to learn today. My name is Fred Williams. I'm the superintendent of the Dublin City School System, and we are about 2,300 students. We have actually 6 campuses. We have 2 elementary schools, themed schools. We have complete school choice. Student can go to any school in our community based on the parent's choice. Although we do have a county school system, it's important to note that as well, and they're a strategic waiver. But inside of our system, Dublin City, child can attend any school. This year is our first year. We started the Irish Gifted Academy, where students who are gifted and highly talented can accelerate their learning at the Gifted Academy. We have a 5th grade academy at the middle school, so students attend our middle school for 4 years. We have an alternative school, which is an academic and behavior alternative school. Some students go because that's what they need in terms of academics, smaller setting, some students for behavior. And we have a Dublin High School and Dublin Middle School. We became a charter system so that we could really take advantage of the flexibility, the broad flexibility, and have the ability to not just think outside the box, but build new boxes. And so we're excited about the flexibility that the charter system brings. And also school governance was a piece that our system really looked at to make sure that we were pushing decisions down to the lowest level possible.
Thank you. One comment that I'd like to make before we begin really digging into the work that you all do is to remind our audience that we're looking at 4 very, very different kinds of school systems. They're very different, not only in their location around our state, but also in their size, in the challenges that they have, and the resources they have. And I hope that you're listening to some of those reasons they became a charter system. And in listening to our panelists, I'm hearing things like the flexibility, bringing the decisions to the local school level, pulling in the community. So as we are discussing and having our conversation over the next several minutes, I want you to think about how differently things are being done in different school systems, but also how there's a common thread that runs through a lot of the work they're doing, and how they are really focusing that work on the challenges that they have and on the needs of their students and the needs of their community. All right, so we're going to take our next question, and we're please, if you don't mind, Fred, since you're already there, we'll start with you. But if you all will just talk to us a little bit about how you have used a specific innovation to address a challenge that you had in your system or in your community. Talk a little bit about how that innovation has made a difference for students, and how your school governance teams participated in that decision making. Not only that, but the implementation. So if you could talk about, and then talk a little bit about how you used your flexibility. So I know that's a lot, but Fred, could you start us off, please?
Sure, I would like to start out just being very transparent. When I became superintendent, Dublin City Schools was in a $6 million deficit. And so through our flexibility, what we did is we engaged our governance teams and our community through community meetings and with our governance team working through them. And the outcome of that was the restructuring of our school system. And we had 3 elementary schools, a talented arts and gifted, a STEM, and leadership, environment, and public service. And so we merged the talented arts and gifted and the STEM to become a STEAM school. And so also we moved our 5th grade, all of our 5th grade to the middle school so that we could maximize the use of our classroom spaces. We didn't need as many buildings. We located Heart of Georgia RESA into our school that would close. We came up with a salary schedule that's independent from the state that we were able to adjust recently through charter flexibility in response to the unknown in terms of what the legislators would do. And so as we look at the flexibility there, it also caused us to look at how we're serving students, not only serving all 5th grade at the middle school, but we saw an opportunity because we were busing our gifted students from one campus to the other to serve them. Now we have a K-8 Irish Gifted Academy, a program of choice where students, all of our K-8 gifted students, they're there and they're learning. They're tied back to their base schools, so the elementary schools don't lose the test scores or the FTE and those type of things, if you would. But we're able to pool our gifted teachers together and our resources to really serve all students at the level that they need. And so as we look back at the things that we have done in terms of our flexibility to be able to hire teachers who are not certified, but are area experts, such as we hired a gentleman from Savannah. He started a construction lab where we built tiny houses to help the working poor and the homeless. And we had partnerships in our communities. And it's just been a real good thing. We've partnered with Middle Georgia State University, and we're able to hire teachers for $1,000 a year. They get a full year of TRS credit, and they're doing their student teaching, but there are teacher records at some of our elementary campuses. And so that really helped us to solve a challenge that we had. And our governance teams were working on that. They sent out surveys. They made the recommendations to the Board of Education on all of our innovations, and our board approved it.
Thank you, Fred. Also, I'd like to just note for you all that in Emily's section of the PowerPoint, there are a couple of slides about the tiny houses. So you may want to go back and look at those. I think we didn't really touch on that because we knew that we were going to have Dublin City represented on our panel. All right, Dina, could you talk with us a little bit about an innovation that you all have used up in Catoosa, please?
Sure. If you recall, back in 2016, when we became a charter system, we were still in the throes of the Great Recession. And so at that time, our district still had furlough days that we were coping with. And so we had just passed an eSPLOST referendum for a one-to-one technology initiative called Let's Get Connected, where all of our students would have a device to use at school and at home. And so once that eSPLOST referendum was passed and we were able to purchase the technology, the next challenge that our system faced was, how are we going to support our teachers, and how are we going to make sure that the hardware was continually working? So our local school governance teams were tasked with the idea of how can we support this technology initiative when we have furlough days and we still had a hiring freeze. So we came up with what we call Catoosa U. And this is a technology intern program for our students. And so what we did is we used our flexibility to hire our students to support the technology. Our warranty for our devices are Hewlett Packard, so we do the self repair on our warranty work. And so we taught our students to help repair our devices. We pay our students $10 an hour to serve as technology interns, and they receive course credit for the technology information class. So not only are our students getting course credit, but they're also earning a wage and working during the school day for our school system. And so this particular innovation has really worked out well for our students. It's different from work-based learning because they don't report to the work-based learning coordinator. They report directly to our technology director and our media specialists in each one of our high schools. And so it's been a successful program for our students and of course for our system because our devices are always in top repair. Our students are learning. They actually earn a Hewlett Packard certificate when they finish the course. And so they're, actually working in the real world and graduate with that certificate. So that's one of the innovations that we have used our flexibility. And our local school governance teams actually had input into this particular innovation.
Thank you. And just again, for your information, if you look in Emily's section of the PowerPoint, there's a slide there about Catoosa U. So if you're interested in that, there's a little bit more information about it. Thank you very much, Dina. Carolyn, can you talk to us a little bit about something really unique that's going on in APS?
Oh gosh, unique. I think I want to start with how our governance structure is designed, and then I'm going to go into some of the other innovative things that we've been doing. So when we started our charter system work, we looked across our system, and our schools were mostly talking about themselves as my school or my cluster. And so with that context, we were able to design cluster level schools along with signature programs. And so our governance structures, we have our local school governance teams, which we call our GO teams. And then at the next level, a representative from each GO team and the principal is appointed to sit on a cluster advisory team. And so the cluster advisory team also has an appointment that we make. And from the cluster advisory team, we have a member from the cluster advisory team and another principal who moves up to the district executive team. And so I wanted to call that out because we wanted to make sure that at every level where decisions are being made, there's someone from the local school governance team always in the decision-making process. And so how we make sure all things are aligned, there's, of course, our GO teams are responsible for meeting at least 6 times a year. The cluster advisory team meet at least 3 times a year. And then the district executive committee, they meet on an as-need basis. And so with this year, we're going to be talking about equity. So I wanted to make that initial call out because that also led us into how our schools are clustered together and the signature programs became into existence. We were able to look out and ask all the clusters, like really think about your community, your schools, and what do you want from elementary, middle, and high? What do you really want that alignment to look like? So we have schools and APS that are STEAM clusters. We have IB clusters. We have certain clusters who've chosen to do college and career academy. And so that was one of our first innovative moves in Atlanta to make sure that every community felt special. And then we moved on to also looking at some of our schools that were lower performing, some of the schools that people probably read about possibly being taken over. And we actually partnered with some partner organizations to come in and assist with those schools to offset, to help us with the learning and the growing of those schools, And that was really innovative and for APS. And so as a result, a lot of those schools are now, if you look at their CCRPI scores, they're really doing well with those. And then another flexibility and innovation I want to call out is we were able to participate in the consolidation of funds pilot. And as a result, many of our students now have summer enrichment programs. We partner with many of our businesses around our city, and we were able to create the first Power Up summer program in the city of Atlanta. And I'm telling you, from theater programs to kids learning about STEAM and STEM. These are like taking kids from the classroom, having that summer learning that's never lost, and children are actually engaged in what they're learning. That is something that's very special. And unfortunately, COVID-19 it came upon us this year, so we're really trying to figure out like how we can continue that learning so that there won't be that summer slide.
Thank you so much. Dr. Lees, would you tell us what's going on down in Coffee County?
We've had several initiatives, just like everyone else has cited, and as you've already said, every system is different, but our charter system initiative that helped us really get off the ground as far as innovation was our College and Career Academy. We designed our College and Career Academy as a standalone high school. Many college and career academies were established as programs of high schools, and the students would come to the Career Academy to take various CTAE type courses or pathway courses. But we set ours up as a standalone high school in which students could choose for their high school experience to be full-time at the College and Career Academy that's located on the Technical College campus. We partnered with the Technical College system to construct our building that is part of the Technical College building. So our students are basically, who attend the Career Academy, are full-time Technical College high school students. So it's worked out really well. And it allows us, charter system flexibility allowed us to use very flexible scheduling so that our students could spend, for example, Monday and Tuesday taking their high school coursework, and then on Wednesday and Thursday they may be taking their college coursework, and then Friday it could be a blended virtual type model. So we're using a blend of classroom instruction and virtual, and then in the classroom on the Technical College side to offer our students a very innovative type approach to getting a high school diploma. Also, other innovations that we've taken advantage of is in the elementary school. When we went through strategic planning 7 years ago, we heard our elementary parents and teachers and staff cite the fact that in the last recession, art had been removed from the 8 elementary schools, and we no longer had art teachers in the elementary schools. And because of the limited funds, we were not able to go out and hire 8 art teachers for each elementary school, but we did have classified staff who were very capable and very competent and very passionate about working with children. And so we used classified staff to fill those art positions, and we now have art in all 8 of our elementary schools, and we're able to offer those students art in the elementary grades. And those classified staff work under the direction of a certified teacher. Therefore, we're meeting the standards to earn the points on the CCRPI and also be able to offer our students art. So that worked out well for us. We've added on our salary schedule, our local salary schedule, as Fred cited earlier in Dublin. They've done some work with their salary schedule. We had actually, board members, you may appreciate it, but we had the husband of a retired educator on our board, and he just said his wife's last 7 years in the classroom, really, it was, she never got the next step. Once you topped out on step 21 on the salary schedule, that was it for most of our veteran educators. So we added a step 23 on our salary schedule. And so once our teachers hit step 21, that ends the state salary schedule, 2 years after that, they can receive a step 23. So that was innovative for us to be able to have an additional step for those veteran educators who traditionally have never received any more compensation. We also are doing initial high school credit in our summer programming. In the past, before we were a charter system, summer school was primarily for remediation. It was for taking classes over that had been failed and whatnot. But once we became charter system, now we're offering initial credit in the summer. And because of the flexibility and we don't have to be as consumed with seat time and those type of regulations that in the past, and I'll be honest, as a former principal and assistant principal, and I was an elementary principal and high school principal and an alternative school director at one point. Those are the kind of things that keep you up at night sometimes when you're a building level administrator. Am I breaking some little rule? Can I let my students go to a paraprofessional and receive art? Can I have my math students maybe cut a few minutes off of this segment each week and they get to take advantage of some sort of extracurricular or some sort of enrichment opportunity? But those were the kind of things as a building level administrator that really, I think, caused a lot of us, when we worked at the building level, not to maybe step out there and take chances that could really benefit our young people. But by becoming a charter system and knowing we have the flexibility, knowing that I may not get my hand slapped or I may not get in trouble, so to speak, for trying to do something innovative, I think it really promotes innovation at the school level, because some of those regulations that we all worked under for so many years are somewhat lifted, and that we are comfortable making decisions at the local level because we're a charter system. And so the initial high school credit we offer in the summer, whereas we didn't before. EIP formula, it's really not very sexy or exciting or anything, but the EIP formula, that's the formula we use to earn funding for kindergarten through fifth graders who need additional support in early literacy. We were able to adjust our EIP formula so that we were able to receive more funding and able to better serve our students using the EIP model. And that was something that's kind of behind the scenes. It's nothing really to bang your drum about because it's not that exciting, but it helped our students and it helped our system. And we wouldn't have done it if we hadn't been a charter system and had that flexibility. School safety, we're able to put at our 8 elementary schools, we've hired off-duty sheriff's deputies and police officers. After the Parkland shooting down in Florida, we made a commitment. And if we didn't have this charter system funding, the little bit of additional funding we get as a charter system, we probably would not have had the ability to be able to put those part-time officers in our elementary schools. But that has given our community a sense of safety and well-being, knowing that we do have officers there to look after the kindergarten through fifth grade students every day, all day, using part-time off-duty officers. So those are some of the innovations that we've done at the school level. But I will mention that to me as a superintendent, one of the innovations that's really paid off for us is the hiring process for principals. That as the superintendent, I go and meet with each one of the school governing councils. Whenever principal opening comes open, I will go meet with the school governing council. I will tell them the process and include them in the process. We will go through the hiring process, and then I will follow up with another meeting with the governing council and have more dialogue with the governing councils. So by the time we've hired a principal for a school, there's been a lot of interaction between myself and they've been part of the process. And I think that has really paid big dividends for us, because once the principal is in place, they are truly part of the team. It's not just somebody that I've gone in and placed there. They didn't have any interaction during the process, but they are part of the process. And I think that's helped us really build some strong leadership capacity in our buildings. So those are some of our innovations.
Thank you very much. Mara sort of led into this one, so I want to thank you for talking about College and Career Academy, because that is a piece of the work that I'd really like for us to touch on. Clarke County does have a college and career academy. They just went through their certification visit, and one of the things that I thought would be very beneficial to the folks in Clarke is to hear how all of you are working with your college and career academies. You all have different models, and I think that's very beneficial and very helpful to hear how those models are working. So Morris, you've given us some information about your college and career academy, and it was wonderful, and thank you so much for that. Would you just touch on briefly what you feel like has been the biggest advantage of having that college and career academy?
I was a high school principal, and we had something called a Performance Learning Center. It was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we had about 60 students that participated in our Performance Learning Center, and it was a kind of alternative type high school program. Some of you may be familiar with it, and I've heard somebody already on the call cite the Performance Learning Center, but a great model for serving those students who, for whatever reason, just don't quite fit in the traditional high school. And it crosses all socioeconomic and racial boundaries. There's some kids that, for whatever reason, the traditional high school model, they'll walk away from us. They'll leave us. And you know, reaching those kids. And so as a principal, having a Performance Learning Center, I saw the difference that made. So when we developed our College and Career Academy, we wanted it to be a standalone school experience for those students that chose that. And so we have about 230 students that choose to attend the Career Academy. And it's somewhat like a Performance Learning Center on steroids. We have, because the students that attend there not only receive the non-traditional type high school programming that you would get at the Performance Learning Center, but they also have all the pathways that are offered through our local technical college. So we have seen tremendous benefit for those students who, for whatever reason, we just historically have not been able to reach and not been able to engage. And we have seen large numbers of those students get engaged and really come out of their shell, so to speak, in our College and Career Academy. And so it's been very successful. And I think it has a lot to do with the leadership there. We've got a great principal. She was hired by the governing council. And when we opened it up, we initially had a former elementary principal that opened it, and he did a great job opening it. And we wanted somebody that had that type of child-centeredness to him in developing the program, and that's what he did. And then when he retired 2 years ago, we had the opportunity to include the governing council in the selection of the principal, and she has picked up the flag and has carried the school to even higher achievement than we had before. So it's been a true community effort too. That's been, our business community's been engaged with it. The governing board for the Career Academy is strong. So that's our Career Academy.
Thank you. Fred, would you talk a little bit, you have kind of an interesting model down in Dublin, because yours is a regional career academy. Will you talk to us a little bit about how your career academy works and how it's making a difference in the Dublin City, Lawrence County region?
As I alluded to earlier, we're the city school system. We also have Lawrence County. Originally, there were 4 school systems that partnered together. 2 have been silent, actually pretty much the entire time. But Lawrence County and Dublin City Schools, it's a way that our community really comes together in the name of education, because we're able to offer programs at our career academy that the 2 school systems could not do by themselves. And we have a welding program that we're very excited about, which our construction companies and several banks have got in and actually put skin into the game. They're actually doing apprenticeships with some of our welding companies, as well as Erdrich here. We have apprenticeships with them through the Career Academy as well. This week, working with the Lawrence County Superintendent and our County Manager and our Career Academy Board, we've really been dealing with the need in our community for first responders, the EMTs. And so we're working on a program where students will be able to get their certification for EMT. And we're also having heavy discussion on how that relates to the Senate Bill 2 and seeing how we can have those tied together so that we'll be producing certifications and students in the workforce that our community has a shortage in and a need for. And it really gives our community, whether you're East Lawrence Falcon or West Lawrence Raider, Dublin City Fighting Irish, it really brings us together in the name of education and really helps us to be able to meet the industry needs of our community.
Thank you very much. Carolyn, would you talk with us about the Atlanta College and Career Academy work and tell us a little bit about your model and how it's making a difference in your communities and in your school system?
Sure. I first want to talk about like the charter system model allows you to do starts and stops and make mistakes. And so we often learn better from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So I say that because we initially started our college and career academy along with Atlanta Tech. We wanted it to look like a regional, very similar to how Dublin is looking. But of course, like Fred says, there's not many people who came aboard. And so for Atlanta, we partnered with Atlanta Technical College to do our college and career academy was always going to be a program. And so our students would come from our high schools, our local high schools, and would go over to Atlanta Tech to take their courses on the campus. I'm very excited that at the start, there was almost 200 students who were taking advantage of those opportunities, being on a college campus. Some of them, this probably was their first time being on a college campus. And so they were able to get their certifications and their pathway completed in nursing and dental. We have some, I think, looking at the construction. And so now for APS, we are excited that in August, we will do a phase 2. And this will allow our students to be on APS's campus. So we are designing a campus, College and Career Academy on the Michael S. Mays campus. If anyone know, our director of CTAE passed away last May. And so we're honoring him because he was such a huge proponent of ensuring that all kids graduated, no matter if they were going to go to college, if they were going to go to tech, if they were going to go into military, and understanding that some of our kids just needed to graduate and get a job. And so we're excited about our phase 2 campus. So we will be able to take in more students. We've already started partnering with Delta. They're excited about the aviation component. We have IBM that sits on our board. And so right now it's very exciting to know that APS will actually have something that we've been dreaming of for a long time, an actual college and career academy on our campus. So that is very exciting to us.
Thank you. Dina, you have the newest College and Career Academy up in Catoosa. So will you talk with us a little bit about what's going on with that and already how it's begun to make a difference in your community?
Well, we just received a $3 million grant from the Technical College System of Georgia, and our county commissioners donated the property for our College and Career Academy. It's in the middle of the county, so it's equal distance from all 3 high schools. The unique thing about our College and Career Academy is we have agreed with the county commissioners to house their new consolidated 911 call center inside our academy. We'll also be housing the Economic Development Authority office inside our county, because that's what college and career academies are all about, workforce development. So we're partnering with our county commissioners to actually sell our community, so businesses look to locate here so that they know that we can meet the demands of the workforce. We started our academy with a cohort from the School of Industrial Systems Technology, Robotics, and Mechatronics in 2019.
We do house those students on the Georgia Technical College campus here in Catoosa County until we build our standalone facility. We actually just opened 2 more pathways for our students. It will be the School of Information Technology and Cybersecurity and the School of Logistics, Distribution, and Supply Chain Management. I think the most unique thing about our College and Career Academy is our Friday professional skills development program that our board of directors created. As you know, Georgia Northwestern attends classes Monday through Thursday, so they don't have classes on Fridays. But we know we will have classes on Friday in our College and Career Academy, so we hired a professional skills talent specialist to work with our students, and they specifically work on soft skills with those students on Friday. So instead of attending class, they're actually on the campus of Georgia Northwestern, but our talent development specialist is in charge of those classes. And the classes, the talent development specialist that we hired was the former vice president of human resources at Unum, which is a insurance company located here in Chattanooga. And he was in charge of onboarding employees. So he works with our students to anything from how to shake hands to how to work as a team, resumes, all those things that our employers kept telling us that our students lack when they are hired into their companies. And so our board of directors actually helps develop our professional development skills program for our students. That has been the biggest thing that we have done as a school system is work on those soft skills with our students. He developed an ABCs of everything you need to understand about how to work in for an employer. And our students have blossomed. We've been asked to present at different conferences now. We've been asked to come to the Georgia legislature to present to our legislators. It's been the biggest thing that we've done in our high schools is develop that program for our students because it's made the biggest difference. And so I think that's what's unique about our College and Career Academy.
Thank you. Our last question, formal question, and then I certainly, I think we're going to have enough time maybe for you all if you have some other things that you'd like to mention. I think we're going to have time to do that. But lastly, I'm going to ask you a 3-part question, and we'll start with Dina. You're already there, so we'll just start with you. When you think about the greatest reward that you have seen as being a charter system, I'd like for you to kind of reflect on that. Also, the greatest challenge that you as a leader have had to overcome to lead a charter system. And then thirdly, what have you had to do operationally in terms of policy and practice and procedure to move your district from compliance oriented to that charter culture?
Well, Lynn, I would say that, what you have to think about when you become a charter system is that, you're not really sharing decision-making. Board members aren't sharing decision-making. It's a superintendent that is sharing decision-making authority with the local school governance team. And I think that's been the biggest culture change for me, because I've been superintendent for 15 years. And so now I had to embrace that decision sharing with our local school governance team because, one of the things that we put in our application and we make sure that we're doing, the charter funds that we receive is about $1 million for our system because we have 11,000 students. And so that money goes straight to the schools based on FTE. And so the local school governance team is the body that decides how to spend those funds to improve student achievement. And I think that has been the best reward that I have seen happen in our system because that money is tied directly to student achievement, and that local school governance team comes together to decide how best to use that money for their school because every school is different. And so that's been a big reward for us. I think that's been the best thing that we've done, is that if I expect you to improve student achievement, then I need to give you the resources in order to be able to do it. And you get to decide how to do it. As far as policy changes and, you know, what we've done is we've shared decision making with that local school governance team in 2 other areas. And that is that when this was probably the biggest challenge I had to overcome was I've always been the one to choose the principals of the schools. So now, though, I interview candidates and I take those top candidates to the local school governance team, and they provide input to me before I make a recommendation to the board. Board always has constitutional authority when it comes to decision making for our school system, but we've all agreed that we will take that input of the local school governance team. And at first I thought, you know, that would be difficult for me, but it's actually been a very good thing. And it's turned out that maybe that the person that I had in mind as far as principal for that school, in a couple of incidences actually changed. And I was appreciative to have that input of the local school governance team when I had to make that recommendation. The other thing that's been great for our system is, you know, the calendar, the school calendar is always a little controversial when you put out that school calendar because everyone wants input into the school calendar. So what we did is in our application, we made the commitment that we would develop, we would have a system committee to develop 2 choices for a school calendar. And then I send those 2 choices to the local school governance team. The local school governance team then takes the input from the school. Of course, there are 2 parents that serve on that and 2 community members and 2 teachers that serve on the local school governance team. And then they make a recommendation to me. And I take the recommendations of those calendars to the board before they actually vote on one. So that's been a very good thing for our community because, you know, we don't necessarily have to do a survey to the whole community about our school calendars because the local school governance team is helping make that decision. And then the other thing that has been so beneficial to me, and I didn't know that it would be, but we have a representative from each local school governance team. We have 17 schools. And we have a representative from each local school governance team serve on a district team that meets with me 2 times a year. And I do a state of the system for those representatives. And then I take input and I listen to what's going on at each school, what concerns they have, what types of things that they feel like I should address. And that has been one of the best things that we have done. Because I will tell you that those local school governance team representatives become raving fans of your school system. And then they go out into the community and they talk about what's going on in the system. And then when it comes time for us to pass an East Blast in our community, those local school governance team members are great advocates for our school system. So that's been just a really rewarding experience for me, and I think, you know, for our board members.
Thank you, Dina. Morris, would you talk a little bit about rewards and challenges and what you've had to do operationally with policy and procedure and practice, please?
As far as rewards and things that we're proud of, the culture change as the charter system has been very rewarding. This is my 9th year superintendent here in Coffee County. As I cited earlier, when I came aboard, I came from another system and I had been superintendent previously in another system that was not a charter system. We became a charter system here in my 2nd or 3rd year, and the level of support that the community has for the school system has grown exponentially. There was a lot of distrust, a lot of backbiting, local politics that went on 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago that doesn't seem to be occurring now. And my board members, I feel like they have benefited from charter systems and board. 3 of them have run unopposed. at least once or twice. And I think that's a good sign when you have board members that are unopposed. And I know that's out of our control, and you all certainly know that. But I do think it speaks to the level of trust that they've been able to build with their constituents using somewhat the governing councils. There's been a level of engagement with my board members and the governing councils that has been healthy coming into this. I had one of my assistant superintendents pulled me aside before we went through with becoming charter system and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" She'd spent her whole career here. I think she was fearful of like a lot of us educators were before we became charter, we were fearful of the rogue school governing council member that might hijack the governing council and create a mess there with that. And, you have all these fears of what could go wrong. But quite honestly, we've not seen any of the fears that we had come to fruition. What we've seen is the benefit of myself engaging governing council members, board members engaging governing councils. I've got a couple board members who will attend governing council meetings, and I'm good with that. I know that they have the best interest of the students and the schools at heart, and they're not there to make decisions or to govern the governing council, but they do have dialogue with them, and I think it's been healthy. And so, as someone cited earlier, when it comes to the eSPLOS, our last two eSPLOSs have been over 60% approval rating. And, when you have an eSPLOS that you get over a 60% vote, that's like a home run. And so we've seen a lot of public trust built that I believe can be attributed to charter system and the fact that more people are involved and engaged than have been in the past. And it does put a little bit of extra work on your school level administrators and your superintendent. There's more that we have to do than systems that are not charter. That there is some extra work, and I believe that's why charter systems should be eligible for a little additional funding that comes to the QBE formula, because we're doing a little more work than some of the other systems, but it's good work and it's the right work. And so I would say the things that we're proud of is just the level of community support that we've seen and the level of public trust that we've built because we're a charter system. And as far as the challenges, I think the initial buy-in of staff being comfortable with putting in the extra work and taking the extra time to get the details right, to plan appropriately, those were certainly challenges. And then continuing to nurture that and bring everybody along and everybody buying into what we're doing. But once you put the processes in place and you support them and you expect them, the charter system really works for our system. And so the challenges, I think, were the doubts that people had just getting over that and then following through with the actual work, because we'd have to do the training. Lynn and your team, y'all come for the training, and Emily, and so we have to, it takes extra work for us to put that together that other systems don't do. So those are some of the challenges, but I think the rewards are worth the challenge. As far as from compliance to charter, that was a fairly easy move for us because our system had some issues with SACs and accreditation, and they were pretty much given an ultimatum that you've got to get it right or we're going to make some changes for you. So my first day on the job, I'll tell you, was being sworn in before the State Board of Education at the 20th floor of the Twin Towers and having to assure them that we would get it right. And so when we came back, the board chair had to go, and our board attorney had to go, and I had to go, and I was brand new on the job. And so we didn't have a choice. We had to get it right. And so the move from compliance to charter was not a real challenging move. We did, of course, adopt some of the basic policy that goes along with charter system and follow the charter system, as far as guidance from the State Department. Lou Ursty with the State Department of Education has been a great support. Cherie Sherman has been a great support. The rest of the Georgia Department of Education staff that support the charter systems have been great. And the Charter Foundation, Dan and his team with Pam are a great supporter. We kind of have our own team, I think, that corresponds, and we work and we meet at the Capitol. Dan has meetings at the Capitol so we have a chance to get some face time with the legislators and get involved with the decision making somewhat that goes on up there. And so I think, as far as the move from compliance to charter, it was not a real difficult move for us, but it's certainly been beneficial.
Thank you, Morris. Carolyn, could you talk with us about APS and some of the rewards, the challenges, and then what have you all, because you're a large system, what have you had to do operationally to maximize what you're doing as a charter system?
Yes, right now we have 64 schools under our charter system. And so one of the greatest rewards about having that many schools, having a large system, is now every school has a strategic plan that we always remind people that this is your North Star. And from that strategic plan, we also have cluster plans that align to the school's strategic plan, that then those cluster plans align to our district plan. So as I continue to talk about alignment, our schools, our clusters, and our district are now in line with one another, so that it's an ease. If I move into one cluster, I know that I'm going to get the same standard from elementary, middle to high. And those cluster principals and leaders, they're always talking. Is there an opportunity to share a counselor, or share an IEP coordinator? So there's those conversations that might not have been had if we were not in this open mindset of a charter system. We also have had the input that they talked about, that the principals who are now, when there's a vacancy, go teams and cluster level members are now really thinking about what's best for our community and our school. And so I think there's something about ownership when decisions are being made at that local school level about what leader will sit in your building. There's a little more buy-in from the community if you had some input and making sure that that leader is at that school. And so that's one of the other rewards that we've had. And the budget, when our go teams are sitting talking about their North Star, their strategic plan, and alignment to their budget, that input and that ownership, again, it's a strong advocacy group. They're really involved. The community members are major partners for many of our schools. And when we think about the challenges, I think about the challenge we had probably more from a central office perspective, because it was a mindset shift. We could no longer do business as usual. We could no longer think about school in a traditional way. And so ensuring that the central office now became consultants instead of the people who told other people what to do. Now we have to listen and really give guidance and give best practices so that people can have those tools to make decisions. And so I really think that that's been the greatest shift as a central office person, is really becoming a consultant instead of becoming that compliance person telling you what you have to do. Now I have to listen to make sure that I'm understanding what is it that you want to do as part of your strategic plan.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Fred, would you talk with us about Dublin City challenges, rewards, and what have you done operationally regarding policy and practice and those kinds of things?
Well, our biggest reward in Dublin City Schools is what we're experiencing today on this call. For me as a superintendent, is being able to pick up and call the other charter systems, the superintendents, whether I'm calling Metter or Fitzgerald or Albany, or even up to Calhoun or wherever it is. It's really refreshing to be able to have someone to go at it with and not go at it alone. In our region, I'm the only charter school system superintendent. And we share amongst ourselves in our research, but being able to call others who are consumed with the idea of innovation and broad flexibility is very resourceful and refreshing. But the reward from that is now I have at the teacher level, teachers reaching out to other charter school system teachers and sharing ideas and innovations at the classroom level. And that's very exciting, that's very rewarding, and just not having to do this work alone, from the foundation to the advisory to all of the consultants that are provided by the foundation. And so that's very rewarding and refreshing when you see that being modeled at the classroom level. The challenge, and this is a challenge for everyone, and it's never going to go away. I call it charter system hygiene. You're never done. Being a charter system and the training that's associated with it is like taking a bath. You're never done. When you think you're done and you stop doing it, it's going to show up. People change, superintendents change, teacher changes, and so the culture has to be tended to. It's like taking a bath. It's something that you have to do every day, and the training must be ongoing. We get the training from Cherie and Lynn ongoing every year, and we have our Board of Education, our governance teams, our administrators, everyone learning alongside. We strongly encourage all of our governance team members and other staff members to attend regional trainings. And so we have a great number of in attendance because we need, none of us are smarter than all of us. And the challenge for us was getting out of the question, can we do that or can I do that? We don't really hear that anymore. It's more so, hey, we're looking at doing this, and people are collaborating on how to get it done. So we look at the learner, we draw the line to the learner in the chair, and then as we move that line to what we want for that learner, to that goal, are there any barriers? And then what flexibility or innovations are associated? So there's a direct line from the learner in the chair to the goal that we're trying to achieve for that learner. So that's, as we look at some of the operational things, we're really doing things now to reward innovation at the classroom. We've modeled the Charter System Foundation Awards. We give a leadership award because we want people at the classroom level leading the charter way, leading with innovation, leading in flexibility, leading and sharing ideas. And so we award monetary awards even down to the classroom level, to the building level, and even for our school administrators to use in their building to forward their charter efforts. And so those are some of the operational things. And I just want to encourage everybody, the more that we can share and the more that we can tend to the culture through training, and that's the key for us in continuing the charter culture.
Thank you. I know I promised you we were going to be finished by 12, but one thing that we haven't touched on, and I wondered if I could get you very, very, very briefly just to touch on this. How have you all connected your school board members with your school governance teams? So Fred, you're already up. So would you just real briefly tell us how you've done that?
Okay, throughout the year, we have our governance teams come to a board meeting. Not only do we train alongside at the beginning of the year so that everyone's hearing the same information, we have our governance teams come to the board and share the goings on. The biggest thing that helps us is the governance team matrix, which we professionally develop our Board of Education so they understand the decision-making that the governance teams have, and we have that open dialogue in terms of them coming to the meeting, sharing what's going on at the building levels. Every governance team comes at least once a year. And so that really helps our board also understand their role in the whole charter system process.
Thank you. Carolyn, how is APS making that connection?
That is one of the things that we've been talking about, how to continue the partnership between the local school governance team and our board members. We do make reports to our board on how our charter system and our Go team work, how we're doing. And also once a year, APS has a Go team summit that our board members are invited to It's all go teams across APS. We try to get everybody, as Fred said, there's something special about collectiveness. And so all go team members come together once a year for a summit, and then our board members are also invited. But, we are always thinking of how to make sure that they're partnering and understanding each other's work.
Thank you. Morris, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, because I knew you were going to have to leave pretty close. So, Morris, could you just real briefly tell us what you all are doing to connect your board and your SGTs?
The main activity we do is an annual training with all of our Board of Education members and all of our governing councils. We do it in a large auditorium. Principals do a great job with decorating, and it's somewhat like a pep rally type atmosphere. And the board members have to interact with the governing council members there. And I think just putting a face with a name and then building relationships during that time helps a lot. And then there's informal, collaboration between the board members and governing council members that goes on. And I'm comfortable with that. Board members attend governing council members. It seems to be predominantly the elementary schools, since we have 8 elementary schools and 2 elementary schools in each, basically 2 in each board member district. And so the board members seem to have more of an affinity for the elementary schools and are more active with their governing councils. And it's been healthy. So really the most formal interaction, though, is that annual training.
Thank you. And then Dina, would you just touch on in Catoosa, how are you all connecting board members and SGTs?
Well, pretty much the same thing. Our annual training is held in a large theater for all of our local school governance team, and all of our board members are there. So we receive the very same training every year. We have, like I said, I meet with a representative from the local school governance team twice a year from each of the schools, and the board members attend those also. And then I do a state of the system faculty meeting for every school every spring, and the local school governance teams are invited to those, and our board members are also invited to those. So they have several opportunities for interaction. And of course, our board members are aware that our local school governance team have some decision-making authorities. For example, I have reports for them because our local school governance teams must approve all of the fundraisers for each individual school. And so our board members are constantly updated on what the local school governance teams are voting on and what types of discussions that they're having, because our principals do a report. We put our minutes of our local school governance team on eBoard, which is Assembly Now, but those minutes from each one of those meetings are posted on our website underneath our Board of Education meetings. So they're constantly updated with what the local school governance teams are doing.
Thank you. I want to just say thank you so much to all of you. This is a very busy, very hectic time, and especially with all the adjustments you all have made with the situation with COVID. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing, because you're all doing just great and wonderful work, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you. Russ?
Thanks, Lynn, for a great moderation job there. And I'm just going to say thank you, panel. Thank you very much. I know there you go. I see some hands going up and so forth. Appreciate that. And I know we're about 9 minutes over here, and we're in the way of lunch. So again, I want to thank our panelists for being a part of our program and our presenters throughout this morning. Appreciate that. And Lawrence, I'm going to look to you for next direction. And I know you all are continuing today. So back to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for all our facilitators for this learning opportunity this morning. I hope everyone who was on today was at least able to get one little nugget that you're able to take away with you today and think about. If you have any follow-up questions, Fenwick and I will be available to help get questions from our facilitators, from our coordinators. I want to thank Russ and Lynn and Cherie and Emily and Dan for their time and for organizing this amazing panel of experts from your surrounding counties and districts. As she said, I know it's a busy time of the year, so I appreciate the time that you all have put in today for us here in Clarke County School District. Just for the folks, for our Board of Education members, as well as our Superintendent's Cabinet, all the documents will be shared from today with you. So if you want to review later the PowerPoint or any of the documents that our presenters discuss, we'll be sharing that with you. And really excited that you all are really excited about our LSGT University that's going to come up this upcoming fall. As Dr. Williams talked about, that training being really important for our LSGT members, so they understand what does it truly mean to champion that work at a local level, so that we can get the voice of the community as we make our decisions moving forward. So we hope to see you all this afternoon. We will start back right around 1 o'clock for some strategic planning. We will be looking back on the history of Clarke County for the past 3 years. And we have a very exciting opportunity now to really look forward and envision the future. And so we'll have two really engaging activities for you all to participate in. You'll be moving around a little bit, typing on docs, talking with one another in breakout rooms. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you all at 1 o'clock. But yeah, enjoy your lunch, and thank you all again for the time.